Welcome to VCF Southwest. We're glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you for coming. On our far right, way down there, is Taylor and Amy from the Taylor and Amy Show. Give a big round of applause. Next to them is David Beem of the IBM Museum. And even though it's IBM, we can applaud. Who's next? Next is Dr. Marc Verdiell, CuriousMarc. Yes?
I like the doctor part.
Oh, okay.
Nobody has called me that in years.
Next to CuriousMarc is Jeri Ellsworth of Tilt 5 and one of the earliest video people. Big round of applause.
I invented it.
June from Nybbles and Bytes. Uh-oh, I have to remember.
You can skip it if you want, it's fine.
All right. David Lovett, Usagi Electric. Uh-oh. See, I have trouble with it. Sean Malseed, right?
Close.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Sean Malseed. Malseed.
Malseed.
Okay. Catch us at VCF West. We'll get that right. Sean Malseed, Everett. And Texas's own David Murray, 8-bit guy, is with us. And I'm Bil Herd. I'm a recovering Commodore engineer, and I'll be your moderator today. So my first question is for CuriousMarc.
Help.
What's wrong with you people? You don't have to fix everything. Sometimes things are just old. They just break. You don't... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Have you ever had your heart broken by a project where you got so far into it and it just broke your heart? Or did you fall in love?
No. I mean, I think everything we've got so far, we were able to make it work. So it's...
That's amazing.
Well, I have to emphasize we, because the projects we take on are too big for one person, right. And sometimes we have to reach out for help. But with the help, it was the beauty of vintage electronics, particularly from the age I'm working on, right? You have access to all the transistors, so eventually you'll find the one that died, right?
Right. So, Dave, we got a lot of Daves here. Usagi. Yes, yes. How has the old stuff changed your perception of modern technology, modern electronics, or has it?
So we've got like 16 hours for me to explain this, right?
No.
So recently I got my hands on a Bendix G15. If you're unfamiliar with that, with what that is, it's a vacuum tube computer from 1956. Vacuum tubes are fascinating because if you can imagine a transistor that's the size of your palm, that's what you have to work with. So you have to do like really tricky stuff that we don't think about today and lean on different aspects of the system. For example, that system uses a rotating drum memory. Who here has never heard the word rotating drum memory before? That is more hands than I was expecting. All right. Imagine a washing machine, and then you put read-write heads on the outside of it. That's a rotating drum memory. It's essentially a hard disk that you put into a circle, and then the heads are fixed. And that was how they built memory back in the day. Not hard storage. They used it to write variables into and read. It was your working RAM, essentially. It's hard to say RAM because it's not really random access. It's sequential. Anyways, the thing was, though, that now becomes the heart of the machine. You lean on it by writing the clock onto it, for example. The clock that clocks everything is an actual physical track on it. So getting into a long way to get to your original question, getting into these older systems, there's so many things today that we take for granted. Oh, if you want a clock and you're building a homebrew, just throw a 555 at it or get a crystal oscillator. That you couldn't do that in the 50s. So
Right.
you had this washing machine churning away on the bottom of your machine. Well, it's down there. Let's use it. Let's put a clock on it. So you really have to change your perception of not only what is computing, but how can we solve this problem that we are presented with. And you can't just throw silicon at it because silicon was silica and it was in the shape of glass.
Right, right. So, Sean, I'll ask you the same question. How has working on the old Macs and stuff affected you looking at your TV set, for example?
TV? What's that?
TV. CRT. Is Dan here? Dan, you here? Okay, never mind.
Okay. Phew. I know who Dan is. Anyway, so I think for me, what's most interesting is seeing the lineage from the old machines to the new machines and kind of being able to, you know, one, put myself in the shoes of someone using that machine back in the day and think like how this could evolve into the systems. You know, would a person back then believe that, you know, we play a video this small on this machine and it barely runs? Could they imagine Netflix in the future? Which really makes me consider how magical the technology we have is today. At the same time, it's built off of kind of a linear progression to the technology, you know, of the 80s and 90s when, you know, home computing really took off. And I think that's part of the drive of why I like to try to modify and overclock and, you know, to see like how modern you can make an old system and kind of, you know, get it into that like liminal space in between the eras of computing. Right. Yeah.
Right. Dave Murray, how do you balance education and entertainment? Or do you try and do something that's entertaining first, educational second, or vice versa?
Wow, that's a tough one. Is this even on? That's a tough one. I don't usually shoot for entertainment.
Okay.
But then the problem is, what do you consider to be entertainment? For some people, watching me restore an old Commodore 64 is entertainment. But I'm not necessarily, like, that's not the goal, right? My goal is usually just maybe edutainment. Is that a word, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah. My goal is usually just to show something that I think is cool and that people will find interesting. And I don't know if interesting coincides with entertainment or not, but yeah.
Right. Hey, June, same question. Because I saw you nodding your head, the difference between education and entertainment, or the inclusion of both, or vice versa.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. So my channel is actually mostly focused on trying to teach people how to use their old machines, and so I'm focused mostly on the programming aspects and kind of the weird intricacies there. But by the same token, it's hard to make that interesting. Like you said, the first comment I ever got on one of my videos was from you, David, actually, saying, "Good luck. It's really hard to do this." And yes, it is really hard to do this, right? So, you know, I've kind of like tried to keep things interesting by trying to make sure that there's live shots spliced up with video capture, explanations with lots of visual interactions, and then also, you know, doing the corny things here and there. You know, I had one of my friends show up as the CIA in one of the videos. And it's just to try and keep people's interest. But yeah, it's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah. So David Beem, how do you think the tech industry has evolved over the years, and what role do you think that retro plays in that?
Well, let me see if I can answer that question. And being in the IT field, I still work with even modern technology now. I have to keep pace with it, yet my knowledge base is from the older systems. I hope the technology has scaled to keep up with us. But I'm frustrated by sometimes some of the things I was able to do 20 years ago that seem harder now, or they seem more complex than what they were.
Than they need to be.
Correct. And, you know, having the older designs are a little bit more simple, but maybe they're a little bit more intuitive as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Less
And simpler.
buggy. Less buggy.
Less buggy. Less chance to become buggy even.
So this is actually like a burning question that I've had. Software bloat. So if we compare like a lot of people say that like if you compare something from 1975 to 1995, the difference is dramatic, right? But if you compare something from 2005 to 2025 or 2003 to 2023, everybody goes, well, the difference doesn't really feel that dramatic anymore. But if you look at the raw hardware, I feel like the difference is that dramatic, but our user experience isn't. So having dealt with IBM's, I'm not sure what new IBMs you've been working with, but having dealt with pretty much the last 40 years of different IBM technology, how do you experience that, both hardware and software-wise?
And some of that, the point is that IBM is not even in the PC game anymore. All that's been handed off to Lenovo. And I mean, I do have a Lenovo Chromebook in my backpack here as my adaptation. That's the device I pull out when I want to get on social media, the internet, very quickly, or to look up something. That's the device I reach for. And granted, yes, it has a very quick boot time and everything else, instantaneous in that regard. It does the things online very well for that particular task range. Yes, I'm frustrated the same way, and I think even the connectivity side of things, what we have to have our machines with a good internet connection anymore to get even to a functional level, is sad. I mean, in a way that it just, you come into a venue like this and you try and connect on the wireless or to download something to show somebody something, and you're okay. Let's see how good the internet is in here. Now but technology is fascinating for me otherwise, because the devices like Chromecast and things like that, I never imagined that I'd be able to transfer an image wirelessly or do a presentation that way. So in some form, I think technology has done better, and it feels the need. But I still have an endearing place for the older machines that started it all, going through and documenting those for future generations to show exactly how it was. Right. Just like David has done, with the projects he has of machines that did things in very interesting and innovative ways, laying the groundwork for what we have now.
Right. Right. And CuriousMarc, one of the things I thought of while he was talking is your love for the old documentation.
Yeah, before I go there, I was going to continue on that, is that people forget to mention that the principle haven't changed. Right? It's exactly the same. People tend to underestimate the 50s and the 60s, but all the basics of computer algorithms, everything is there. Right? And what we have done is faster, more. Right. And also for an engineer, it's hidden. Right? It's in a chip. I used to work at Intel, and there's only a few people, even within Intel, that have access to what the chip does, and then they don't really know what it does. One guy works on the left side of the chip, the other guy works on the right side of the chip, and it kind of all is magically done, but it's more of the same stuff that was there in the 50s and the 60s. And I think that's the beauty of my channel, which is or our retro channel. I should be more general than this, but on mine, it's celebration of engineering. Right, so I think it's entertaining. No, engineering is fun, so it should be entertaining on its own. I don't have to do anything, but you open it and you go straight to the basic principles, and they apply 100% to what we do today.
Right.
So,
right.
What was your question?
Well, the question I asked for you is David mentioned something that reminded me of documentation. And the stuff from the retro days was much better documented, would you say, than especially the HP stuff?
Yes, and both the HP, well, we work on stuff that's excessively well documented. HP
Right.
and the NASA stuff is
Right.
excessively well documented until you get to the subcontractor, which is a military subcontractor, and still won't tell you, 50 years after the fact, like this. But yeah, that's something something that we miss a lot, right? When you were buying this HP equipment or your IBM machine, came with complete schematic for that machine and the repair instructions. And HP did the same. They sold to an engineer. They expected the engineer to want to know what was inside and how to repair it. And people that didn't do that, you should look at the patents also. Patents used to be a complete description of your machine, right? And that worked as long as the US or the Western world was ahead and people respected the patents and intellectual property. And that all fell apart when, not to name anybody in particular, but Asia starting to make copies, and that became unsustainable.
Right.
Because people, so that's.
Or you needed to have a patent that was so broad that you could protect yourself for decades to come.
Try to get your patent respected in early Japan and early China. So Japan did HP in, basically. They said they would publish their stuff, and then 2 months later they would be the same instrument. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but the beauty of the documentation made by hand, the top of the documentation is the NASA one, because it's a military project. We still have to do it for military, by the way. We have to document everything, and everything is a drawing, so it's very visual.
Okay.
And they have kept most of it at the NASA level, and that's how we found the drawing of our pin in our connector. Right? Then we went to Samtex, they make us new pins. How do I do that? Well, here's the drawing. They went and did the exact same thing. Okay. But the amount of work it must have taken to document this, it's just mind-boggling.
Cool. If I go to answer the question myself about the modern software or whatnot, I'm from Commodore, Apple I, right? They're around, we're not. But I have an Apple phone and I hate it. So I'm still a good Commodore engineer. Jeri, you and I did stuff back in the days of NTSC. What were some of the challenges we faced?
Oh my God, old analog video is pretty challenging. I think you're talking about when I did the Commodore DTV. Yeah. So when we designed that originally, the spec of it was, this is just going to be something we're going to sell in North America. And so, I had to quickly learn how NTSC worked at kind of a very fundamental level. For North America, we were on a very tight deadline to get this chip done, get this toy out the door, and it kind of sucked when I was done because I didn't quite understand everything that was at play. And then the project took off, and they're like, okay, now we're going to ship it worldwide. And I had the brutal realization that video standards aren't standard everywhere. And I had to quickly, in a very short amount of time, figure out how to make this thing work everywhere in the world, with very limited hardware.
Right.
Nothing like what you all had to do back in the Commodore days. It's kind of amazing that with just a handful of transistors.
We botched the NTSC spec, so we literally did not make good NTSC, and when digital TVs came out that did not have a vertical hold, all our pictures rolled, and we had to rev the chip.
And we're paying that price today. Like people that want to try to capture from these older devices, it's tough because
jail bars.
It's all over the place. You're just assuming like a phase lock loop, and these old tube TVs would just grab a hold of anything. And half the time when I plug my retro tech into a capture card, it's just
right.
A no signal found.
We didn't even have YouTube back then either. So what were we using? We were using where were we streaming the video to back then? I'm trying to remember the targets.
Oh, way back before
Yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Ustream.
That's it. That's it. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
This is a personal question of mine, but we got the Taylor and Amy show at the end, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. you're a package deal.
Yes.
So
we both learned right.
They are one.
As far as I'm aware, the rest of us sitting up here tend to put a camera on and sit in front of it all by our lonesome and talk into the void. What's it like having somebody else in the room with you?
Amazing.
Well, I think it goes to the edutainment question. Everything that we're doing, we're trying to educate ourselves.
And entertain ourselves.
I'm not somebody that can say, I've done this repair on a Commodore 64 50 times. Let me show you how. No, it's me going, okay, now, what I think I'm learning on the internet is that I take out these things. and like, we're literally everything we do on our channel. And by the way, we are brand new and we are small. And if all of y'all subscribe, that will like double
double our.
That's Taylor and Amy
all
show.
The people that have unsubscribed from 8-Bit Guy would subscribe to us. We never have.
We are trying to teach ourselves this stuff because we have nostalgia for the 80s. We talk about what computers we had and didn't have and wished we had, and we like to, play with it and upgrade it. We make each other laugh because we have been best friends since 1984 when we met. And so doing it together was just, it could not have happened without, neither one of us would ever have done this alone. But together, safety in numbers, I suppose.
Well, and I give you I try to be the every person and ask the questions my mother would want to know, so that we also have someone to explain things to.
Right.
Amy. And color commentary.
Right. Yes. So that's. I don't know it any other way, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't have a comparison group for and this is the Taylor show.
The reason I ask is
no one would watch.
The reason I ask is that talking alone to the void, you get quite used to it, and then when somebody else is in the room,
it freaks you out.
I'm like, "Hi, my name is David."
It's terrible. I hate,
I
at
can't
work I have to do a lot of videos, and we have a videographer sitting behind the camera, like, "Oh, do it again with a little bit more inflection here." I'm like, I just choke.
I actually have a question for David.
Which one?
The Usagi Electric.
All right, there we go.
The rabbit one. Is that what I find really amazing with your channel is that, like us, you're taking on unknown hardware, and it's hard to do on your own. And that you have been in, I'm in Silicon Valley. I have lots of people right there that can grab, and they'll come right to me. But you've been able to do it over the internet by having the community help you out. And how did you manage that on your Discord channel? How does that work?
So the Discord is the saving grace of pretty much everything that I work on. When you have something, probably you're referring to the Centurion in particular.
Yes.
So this is a machine that nobody knows about. You Google Centurion, well, before I started making videos on it, you Googled Centurion and you got nothing. You Google Centurion now and I have completely broken the search algorithm. I'm like the first 2 pages, which I take a lot of pride in. I'm very proud. I'm very happy with that. But you know nothing about it. So I kind of started working on it, trying to figure out what it was. And of course, I mean, as you know, if it's a one-man show, you hit a brick wall immediately. And how do you overcome that? And so being able to have somebody, even if it's just digitally, somebody that you can bounce ideas off of and get a foothold going on that way, it makes a massive difference. And then what I found really most fascinating about the Discord group was that we all kind of split up into our own little roles based upon what we were capable of doing. I am a software idiot. I don't know how to program anything, but I can, twiddle bits with the hardware, and I have the hardware at hand. So it doesn't make sense for me to sit down and waste 2-3 days trying to write a piece of software that somebody else who is offering and is excited about it can do in 10 minutes. So I'm like, hey, if you can punch this out for me, shoot it over to me. I'll run out. We'll punch it in through the memory monitor and see what happens. And we'll get like a live stream going on or something like that. And it becomes this like global group effort. We have local people. We've got Eric and Ken who are here local in Dallas who actually used to work at Centurion, have been an incredible help. But we also have people in New Zealand, people in Australia, people in California, people all over the planet that are contributing in small ways, but it becomes this massive cumulative effort to where at the end of the day, I feel like I'm the dumbest one working on this thing, which is probably the best position I could be in because I'm surrounded by a colossal number of really brilliant people. And the fact that it all came together on a chat group blows my mind.
So there are some good things about the modern internet then?
As long as it's not in the YouTube comments.
Well,
Very few.
Well, that's half a joke. None of what we do today could be possible without the internet. Finding parts.
I still say the
eBay,
word data
right?
book instead of data sheet because I'm from the days of books instead of the internet.
Looking up stuff, there's so much information until you break the machine and then you look for the stuff and all the reference that come are your own. That's really annoying.
What I liked about the old data books is you could read it from cover to cover and learn about all the products, whereas the internet, I have to drill down. I have to know about the product before I can drill down into the product. And so that's a big thing for me with the data books as far as they were better. So
the thing, though, is that if you have access to data sheets, which if your Google Foo is good enough, you can find data sheets for nearly any IC out there. If you have access to the data sheets and you have access to the hardware, like physical access to the hardware, there's almost nothing that you can't figure out with enough time. So on the Centurion, for example, we had no schematics, no documentation, nothing. But we had physical access to the hardware, and we could look at it and we go, okay, that's an AM2901. Google AM2901 datasheet. There it goes. Bitslice ALU. We know what the pinout of it is. And so then you just sit down over the course of 4 months and beep it out the hard way, and now we have a schematic.
So how did this start with you and Centurion? Did you like sit in the same room together and you stared at it going, I'm going to fix you? Or what?
I actually wasn't shopping for a Centurion at all. I was shopping for a TI 990. I wanted a mini computer, and born and raised in Texas, a little Texan pride here. Yeah, some Texan
right,
over
yeah,
there, right?
Several Texans.
I was looking for TI 990, but there was this unknown Centurion mini computer in Muskogee, Oklahoma for $100. And I saw that it had two 19-inch racks and 3 data terminals, and I'm like, well, that's worth it right there. I can at the end of the day, I can resell the data terminals for $100 each, and I'm coming out on the other side triple the profit. But then it's like, it's the mystery. I'm sure this grabs all of us, where you get into something and you Google it and you get no results. And you're like, all right, I'm not going to be defeated by this, right? And so that's what's kept me going on that particular project for so long, is that because there's no documentation, because there's nothing out there, there's that constant mystery that's just slightly out of reach, and we're constantly chasing it. And I'm sure that you run into this. I'm sure you run into this. I'm sure, well, it's hard to say it with Commodore, but I think all the mysteries have been solved in the Commodore section.
But I've actually got one of those on display out the room right now. It's the Heathkit H11A, which is a PDP-11. So you think you have docs, but you actually don't, because half the cards are hand-built off of schematics and assembly guides from some rando back in 1970. And so you have to do crazy amount of work to try and get these boards to work again, because you're dealing with bodge wires, you're dealing with bad soldering jobs, data sheets that don't exist because Heathkit used EEPROMs in a lot of places where they should be using like other discrete components. And so I totally feel your pain there.
I'll accept the blame for the bodge wire on the C128. That stupid wire cost me $1 million. It was a penny for the wire and 99 cents to install it, and times 1 million. So, IBM Dave, what are some of the misconceptions of retro, would you say, as far as it gets a bad rap or just no rap at all? Or
well, I don't know. It's maybe I don't know if I can define that. Earlier the talk was about community and data sources. In addition to code bloat, we've also seen data bloat. Sometimes there's just an overwhelming amount of results. I use the example of, and I was not internet enabled until I started working for an ISP 25 years ago. And then I had to learn how to fix my customer systems with something I was just experiencing for myself. And I had in fact, probably a very cheap motherboard, clone motherboard that I found out there at some point of a few years after being on the job. And I had a particular video fault with it. I searched for just the model number of the motherboard, and I think it was like the third result. I drilled in, described the problem I had exactly, did a 15-minute fix, and I solved that issue from there. Nowadays, if I were to do the same thing, of course, the motherboard model number is going to be overwhelmed by other devices that are completely unrelated. You're going to get sponsored ads. When I search for something, I get a different product that what Amazon recommends that I buy rather than what I'm looking for. It just drives me crazy. And I've always said, in particular for the retro side of things, my enjoyment is really not the equipment itself, it's the community that's out there. Yeah. And I came into it, from 25 years ago, getting onto news groups. That was the way that we communicated back in the day, and that was an international forum in that case. And I had to learn how to negotiate, and thankfully a lot of it was in English on forums, was a predominant language, but it was very international, and even trading parts and pieces with someone internationally was a whole different thing. Even more so today, the VAT and all the other stuff that come in for shipping an item somewhere. But that's where I kind of got my start in the being a part of the community and learning to depend on other people out there that had the knowledge. I'm also small-time YouTube here. I'm at 1,600 subscribers. And, of course, we know the struggle, Right.
Did we line up by subscribers numbers?
But no, I don't think so.
You have more than I do.
Accident?
Maybe. Wait a minute.
You gotta get him over to the left.
Yeah. But I jumped into it, and, I hear all over. I hear even people talking in the big room, circling the tech and everything else. Well, I want to start a YouTube channel and everything else. Jump in now. Get content generated. My production value, I have a $20 used camcorder that gives HDMI output, okay, that I run through, and I got a clear click video capture box, so I can do VGA and things like that, and similarly the composite stuff, the older stuff that sometimes will give you the no signal and everything else. But I start OBS, and if I need to pause a video, I pause it, but I try and go through one straight shot, no editing, because if you edit something, it takes 2x, 3 times as long even to render the stuff that you're putting up. And I just shoot from the hip. And I used to say on my channel, you get the mistakes and all. If I go through and I stumble, or I called one video the 1,000 because I'm going through and I'm trying to describe that to my viewers, that fourth wall of what my experience, what my knowledge of that is. I just see myself where I really feel that you've addressed my background is a documentation too, because we've gone through to where I've had the luck of I interfaced to an individual at the so-called Ardent tool, which comes back to the newsgroup thing. That's a compilation of all the data of the last 30 years of the people being involved, an IBM engineer in Germany contributing material of what he knew. And there are some things And he still shows up from time to time. There's some things that he was wrong on. His perspective is a little bit off that we've refined and we've learned. And certainly some of the stuff that I've gone through has been wrong. I learned later on it's wrong, or I have a misconception on things. We develop theories because we don't know the background in some cases. But Thomas has set up the website of ardenttool.com. And I mean, just building on all that data, building on what Louis Oland went through and started compiling, just plugging stuff together to get to learn about equipment. I view my channel as driving people towards that content that Thomas has. And Thomas is in the Czech Republic. I'm dealing with someone on a very frequent basis halfway around the world from me that thankfully also talks to me in English, and his knowledge of English is very good. To just be able to document and diagram. We have diagrams, and you know, for someone in the retro side that they come to a festival like this and they find a system like an IBM PS2, okay, first thing you do is you go to the Ardent Tool site. I'll tell you, in 3 clicks you can be in there and find out the adapters and the system and everything else. There's going to be diagrams. There's going to be pictures that I have, high resolution pictures that I've contributed to Thomas that he's put up there, and LinkedIn and everything else. We link in that older news group data that it may be a killjoy in some ways, that we kill the pioneering spirit in that regard, that someone that thinks that, hey, I want to go in, I want to come in and I want to solve all the issues and fix this being broken. But it's a great resource for at least understanding the machines, and we've gone further. We do BIOS images, we do all sorts of stuff, and going through to the point of analyzing the BIOS, analyzing the microcode that runs all the parts and pieces and comes together. And we learn about a little bit of the background in that experience as well. We stumble across some of the things that, you know, are a little bit innovative at times, but we're also a little bit crazy ways of doing things too. Right. That you can sense how did the designers, what they intended, but what they came up with in the end. Yeah.
I was going to say, Marc, I'm curious.
I think
on
the
your
original question was a misconception about
of retro, and I thought
retro.
Of you with the misconception.
If I can interject in there, I think particularly in the stuff I work on, which is fairly high end, right. People underestimate what you could do with retro technology. People don't realize that in the early 1960s, you look at the Apollo ground station and the instrumentation that's there, it's all digital, right? The frequency meter goes up, is digital, 10 digits, goes up to 3 gigahertz, thank you very much. And it's all with individual transistors. The voltmeter is digital, same thing, maybe 8 digits. Right, so that it's slow. It was super expensive, but it could be done. Another one that surprised even me. At the CHM, we had a big donation. We had an IBM 650. Does anybody know what an IBM 650 is?
Yeah. Some kind of.
So it's a tube machine from the. What?
Can I steal
Some
it?
kind of computer.
That's exactly what I want. I want one.
Okay.
How do I get it?
we have one. We'll find a way for you to see it. It's not in display. But anyhow, that machine comes and there's it's a tube computer from the 1950s. A very famous IBM machine, and the memory unit comes with it. No core memory, tubal stuff, and I asked the guy, how much memory? And I expect like 8K, 64K. You guys understand, right? The guy told me 2 megs. And I'm like, 2 megs in core memory in 1950.
Good Lord.
If you paid for it, you had it. And another one that irks me is people say, well, no. Compared to the, if we could go to the moon with an Arduino. Right. And like, no, you don't go to the moon with an Arduino and a coffee machine. Yet your Arduino is faster. but I don't think it has 250 input outputs. I don't think it does 29 real-time 15 bits digital, no A2D, right? So it's a lot. It's a lot. It could do a lot more than you think.
Right. And did its job really well.
Sorry?
It did its job really well, the AGC.
Yeah, it continues to surprise me. And then when you ran out of digital, you went analog. So we, through the of course, it's military stuff, right? Stuff that you never know. So you're excused from not knowing it was done, right? But we got the whole tome of the simulation of the J2 engine. J2 engine, guys, rings a bell, you know, large Saturn V rocket. It has F1 engines at the bottom and it has J2 engines at the top. And the difficulty when you develop a rocket engine, one of the big difficulty is to start it up without blowing it up. Right? Because you get all these valves and you get all kind of effects, and they couldn't do it with a digital computer. What did they do? They went analog computer, all the differential equations. It's a book full of stuff, and you can see all the valve and the unstable stuff in it, and it's just wow. That's how they do it. And there's some of these engines are still flying to death, right? To me. So you start to gain some respect. Same thing I said before. The principle were there. They didn't have the speed of the calculation, but the principle and the engineering was there. If you were willing to pay, you could actually do it.
Right. I'll come right down the road. Jeri, I know you and I go way back, and you made your own transistors and stuff like that. But the same question, is there a misconception of the retro? Was it really that bad, or was it the Holy Grail? And what can we learn from it?
Yeah, I think I work with a lot of younger engineers these days. I've kind of gotten up there in years, and there's a misconception with old technology because it's old, it's not relevant today. And I'm glad you brought up analog. A lot of times, working with fresh engineers, they're like, well, we're just going to do this all digitally. And a lot of times the right answer is throw a couple transistors down and do it analog. It's cheaper, more reliable, maybe it gives you better precision. And I think that's a misconception about older technology and why we should be documenting it and getting it out there for others to experience.
Right. Anybody else have an opinion on the retro stuff?
Well, as far as misconceptions go, probably the ones that I get a lot is I do all these different ports of my games, and it's almost always younger people. And they'll come and say, hey, David, will you make a port for, and they'll list some computer or some obscure thing, like the TI-99. I'd like to see what that looks like. And the thing is, like, when I start talking to them, they think it's literally just like going into the compiler and changing a switch or something like that to make it compile for the TI-99 instead of the Commodore 64. Right. And so sometimes it can be really difficult to explain to people, like, no, it's like a total rewrite. Like, everything, the graphics have to be redrawn, the code has to be redone, and a lot of younger people just don't understand the sheer incompatibility between these systems.
That's cool. So, Taylor and Amy, I forgot my question. Hang on a second. Oh, what's your favorite show you've done, or what's the worst show you've done?
Our favorite tends to be whatever we did most recently, and I know that's
guilty. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
because we had the most fun with recently.
I'm very proud of the one where we built the PAL 1. It's a Chem 1 replica. Because I teach Amy to solder somewhere in the middle. This is definitely like
and I did.
Early things I would have edited out if we had done that video 10 months later. But so there's a long solder gap in the middle. But then we got it running. And there's quite a few. Like that's one of the ones. There's a couple I can think of where the video starts and we're like, here's what we're going to build today. And then somewhere halfway through, there's a jump. We change clothes completely because it's like it's 3 weeks later. Let me tell you what happened. Right, and I talked the audience through all the troubleshooting, which I'm fortunately not going to subject you to. But and that's one of those where I had issue after issue. But when I got it running, it was so worth it, right? You know, that's the fun part. What was the question?
Well, I'll ask an add-on. Do you show your failures on? And I'll ask that of everybody.
We admit to them.
Yeah, we don't always.
We rarely show them because often when there's a moment when I get frustrated and the words that come out of my mouth are "kill the camera." This is just. I mean, we're just wasting battery at this point because who knows how long this is going to take me. This could take me days. So yeah, we don't usually film our failures, but we do try to admit to them,
right,
and be like, okay, here's what happened.
Yeah, at Hackaday, I never admitted my failures. Everything worked perfectly.
Right. Now, just
I'm mugging to the camera.
Yeah, if Amy ever looks right at the camera and goes, "This went perfectly with no problems," it means it took an hour because I did it backwards and had to unsolder it, and reinstall it. Yeah, so that's. There are moments like that. You know, mistakes. I try to. You know.
I don't know that there's one that we really don't play. I mean, there's ones that like we did a few robot kind of ones and some rocketry ones.
Yeah,
nobody really
when we
watches.
started the channel, we didn't know that we were going to lean as hard into retro computers as we ultimately did, and it's been very rewarding and worth it, and given me an excuse to buy computers I always wanted. So that's been fantastic. But yeah, we did some like robotic stuff and some rocket stuff that no one watched.
We even did a cloud chamber.
We did.
Yeah, which worked.
Yeah, we were proud of ourselves.
So go look for that.
Yeah. Like I said, we just started this channel to have fun and to learn because I love learning, and I think that's where the educational value. Like I always like I don't know who I'm about to quote, but the teacher who is not also a student is neither. Mm-hmm. Whoever said that,
They're
totally
smart.
agree. And so I'm always trying to learn. That's kind of the point of it.
The whole channel is stuff that we would be probably doing anyway, but we decided to film it one day.
Yeah, because when I start out, I'm like, well, here's some things I've built. And right, if I had started the channel earlier, I would have totally built them on the channel. But.
Well, so I'll ask everybody here, what came first, the engineering and then you turned the camera on, or did you turn the camera on to show your work or your do it? Dave, did you set out to start a channel?
No, not really. I'm just kind of organically evolved into that.
Yeah. So, June, I'll ask you the same question. Did you go one day, oh, I should film this, or I'm going to film something. What is it I'm going to film?
Yeah, I thought I wanted to learn some things about the 128. It was a platform that's always been kind of fascinating to me, and I figured I might as well document it as I went. And like Taylor and Amy, I try to show the mistakes, but not in the way of like, oh God, why is this working? All this swearing, all that kind of thing. It's more of a learning moment, right? So like, how do you turn that into something that you can learn from? Because if you don't learn from the mistakes, then you don't learn how to correct it in the future or work around issues that you wouldn't otherwise think about. Right. So I try to show it, and I try to also, make it interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll chime in a little bit on the mistake thing, because obviously when you get a certain number of subscribers, then you get a certain number of comments about your mistakes.
Yes.
Maybe the smaller channels don't.
We'll just have to trust you.
What I'm told, but yeah. So I still have a policy of showing my mistakes, and I have to deal with the consequences of that because a lot of people hate me. Like I get totally roasted because I don't know. There's the paperclip thing, necking a CRT, just retrobright's gone wrong, just various things like that. But I've always said that you learn more from failure than you do from success, and I like to show the mistakes because that way somebody else won't make that mistake, hopefully. And anyway.
Sean, same question. Yeah.
About mistakes? What was the question?
Do you show your mistakes? Do you show your mistakes, or do you edit them out?
There are no mistakes. There are only happy accidents.
Totally normal computing.
I try to keep in some mistakes. I mean, I like to try to show the progression of whatever it is that I'm doing. Like, oftentimes I'll go in not really knowing if the thing is going to work. Like, I'll do some testing beforehand to see if it's likely possible. But then during the course of it, I'll run into issues, and I'll try to either show the issues, or if it was like really tedious, then I'll try to, you know, edit like, oh, 4 hours later, ... And then I'll explain what went wrong, or maybe show a clip like this error came up and I had to do this troubleshooting and whatnot. So, I mean, from that perspective, I do think, like you said, it's important to show and learn from mistakes. And then not only do you learn more from mistakes, but then other people can learn from your mistakes watching them and hopefully have a better time at it.
Right, right. So let's talk about YouTube a little bit. Do you like it?
No.
Is it a necessary evil?
Yes.
Yeah. What about the users on the commenters on YouTube? Who's had an interaction with a I don't know what to call them, listener or viewer or what?
Oh my goodness, I've had some excellent. Honestly, 99.9% of my comments are just extremely positive, and I've met some really cool people through comments. You know, it's amazing. I think in our like kind of retro computing sphere specifically, the people who are watching these videos are just so interested and so like into this stuff and doing the same stuff that you're just going to get all these positive collaborative comments, and it's really incredible. But like ages ago, I found this like busted up compact Mac that was spray painted black, and I called it the Cursed Mac because the CD-ROM drive just like opened and closed on its own. So I made it kind of a little bit of a series of pulling it apart, seeing all the wacky upgrades that were done in there. But then the person who sold that Mac to the person I bought it from saw the video and was like, I had that in my house. I can't believe I saw it on YouTube, and told me some of the history where they found it at a yard sale. And then the person who did all the wacky modifications saw the video and messaged me, left a comment like, oh, wow. I saw this computer that I modified in college 20 years ago come up on my YouTube feed and fell off my chair. Yeah. And then he gave me the whole backstory of like why he did the modifications, and like he was taking it to college and he needed a CD-ROM drive in there, so that's why he like hacked one into the front of this SE30. So yeah, I mean, I've had some wonderful, crazy experiences in the comments.
Right. So go ahead.
I'm gonna echo what he says. Like it's really easy to dump on YouTube commenters because that's the meme, right? You get into if you want to go into the YouTube comments, you got to put on your fireproof suit, right? But like the reality, at least for me, and based off of what you were saying, is that like 99% of them are fantastic, good information, very positive, and even if I totally messed something up ridiculously bad, which happens like every episode. But so whenever I mess something up, people do give constructive criticism in a very positive manner in the YouTube comments. The problem is that the human brain is wired to look at the negatives. So we see the one bad comment out of 450 good comments, and we're like, oh my God, I totally, you know, bad words come out. And it's just because it was one dude that's, I don't know, maybe he's having a bad day and I was the vector that it got taken out on. Now so my personal experience with YouTube comments is fantastic, wonderful. And to go back to your original question of what do we think about the YouTube as a platform, it's also a very easy platform to dump on. Oh my God, they're making dumb mistakes. Why did they remove the dislike button? YouTube is going down the crapper. I think YouTube is friggin' killing it, man. We sit here because YouTube gave us the option to make a living off of doing something that we love to do. There is no other platform out there that gives us this capability and this freedom. And I don't know, maybe it's a hot take or not, but I think, of course, it's a large corporation. They're going to make decisions that I don't agree with. But I don't have to agree with them. I don't even need to understand them because there's such an insane level of corporate above those decisions that I could never wrap my head around. But I still think that the end product, what we get to work with, is something that we've never seen before in history, and I appreciate it fantastically. Sorry. I'll get off my soapbox now.
So, and I watch your channel, and you had a moment where I think we all were like, is it going to work? And I commend you on showing that moment. where the Centurion powered up and everything, people had to be cheering, right?
Which moment? There's been like seven
I know.
Of those.
right. Because as soon as you're done with one, you got to go on to the next one, right?
So the two big hurdles that so there was, every time we hit like a point where I'm just like, this is not going to work, it has to do with the hard drive. So if anybody out here has used a hard drive, you know that when you get a spinny disk, things get questionable at times. And there's many people that I've talked to that are like, yeah, you can't bring an MFM drive out. If an MFM drive is clicking, you just throw it in the bin and go grab another one. Well, there's only like a handful of Hawk drives still out there. The CDC Hawk drive is a 14-inch hard drive. So you got 14-inch platters. They're huge, right? And it's an open air drive. So like MFM drives are all sealed. You know, we always think of hard drives are hermetically sealed. This thing is straight up open air. It prevents dust from getting in there by having a very strong fan pushing positive pressure into the cavity. And that needs to go through a 99% HEPA filter. So there's like 1,000,001 points of failure. And a failure on that means that the head says hello to the disk. And you don't ever want them to meet. Right. It's like your wife and your girlfriend. You don't ever want them to meet. So when they meet, sparks fly. So you got to really take care on it. And there's a lot of things that you have to really make sure that everything goes perfectly right. But at the end of the day, there's always that moment where you got to push the button and you're like, well, it's either going to work or it's not. We got a 50-50 shot at it. And so when the heads floated for the first time, you were like, oh my God, where's the nearest beer, right? And then you're like, okay, so now we got the heads floating. Let's try to get data off of it. Like, oh, well, we're not getting any data. Great, pack it in, we're done. And so for the last VCF East, I was trying to bring a Hawk drive up. It's actually the same Hawk drive that's in the building over there. And it's like 2 weeks before VCF, and this thing is not giving me data. The heads are floating. Right. So, you know, the girlfriend and the wife haven't met. But also, the girlfriend and the wife, neither of them are talking to me. So things are not good at the moment, right? And so there was several moments where I was just like, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to make it. You know, obviously the camera's off. It's been off for 4 days because it's just like, all right, we're going to work on the Hawk today. 30 minutes later, I can't use any of that. Oh my God. Right. So the camera's been off for 4 days, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, head in my hands, like I don't know what to do. Like, and of course, at the end of the day, it was I had the sector card with a dip switch set wrong or something. It was something really dumb, but it was the logic to get there. And then when you finally overcome it, you're like, oh, thank God. Now both of them are talking to me, but they still haven't met each other.
Right.
I have a lot of fun with the haters on my channel, or at least back in the day. I find it very entertaining because I just put up whatever I want. Sometimes it might be artistic. Sometimes it might be extremely technical. And you gather these different audiences that expect one type of content, and then you present them with something that's kind of off the wall artistic, or, you know, and they get kind of hatey and stuff like that. And it's pretty funny stuff. And when I'm feeling extra trolly, I go in there and I just go, lol. And then if they come back to it, lol. I have one video where I hiked out to a lava flow and I scooped up lava with a metal shovel. And a lot of people hate me for that. And that's my favorite one to go lolling on.
Wait, where's the hate? Why?
I thought it was fun. Lava's heavier than you think. It's rock.
Jeri, that makes me so angry. Why? You never know what someone's going to not like. But who cares?
But I think in somewhat for me, the comments are actually your reward, right? It's a motivator that, you know, have I done good? Will people like it? And as you said, most of them are positive, and then you're omnipotent, right? There are people that just look at it and will find a 1 second where they don't like, they're just negative people. And you just go, pshoof, and they're gone. I don't lull them, I just go. So you have to... But there are very few, so you have to curate your comments, right?
So I don't, actually. I don't curate any of the comments.
You're not big enough.
Guys!
Guys, what's in your mind? So no, the problems become when you have a very successful video, then the quality of the comment tanks, and it demands to be more vigilant. But it's not very difficult to keep it clean. At least YouTube does a much better job. It gets the really bad ones out, and then when you see a conversation is starting to go bad, and people are just going at each other, you just kill the first comment and it's gone. And because people imitate each other, right? Yeah. But I mean, what happens frequently, I'm always amazed by the reach of the platform, is that someone will have the part that we don't have, right? And the number of times that has happened. Yeah, there's you, right, that had the part on the IBM that didn't have, or the best one was on the Alto. We start to read those disks that crash your heads, right? And we find one. The Alto is an amazing machine, and they have almost invented everything. And we read one and see what are they doing? What are they doing here? There's just the name of the guy. You can't remember, Bill or something. And we start to read the files. This is voice over IP. They are doing Ethernet phone or something, in the 1970s. How is that possible? And then, but we couldn't figure out what that was. And then there's a comment on the video where we're all scratching our head. What is this? And it comes from Bill. Oh, you guys have found my disk. What? And then immediately we go call him, and he explains that yes, they did an Ether phone. They had hardware. This is what it does. This is how you make. And it is always Mr. Fancy Pants was found by his roommate, right, and a commenter. So I think that's the comments are a blessing if you moderate them. And then admiration for YouTube, scaling that thing. I mean, the technical problem that it represents to scale that thing globally, that's not easy.
So actually, going back to your Diablo drive, you read something like 150 packs, right?
Yes, 114, I think.
Okay, so that's a lot of data. I'm curious, did you come across anything that you felt extremely uncomfortable looking at? Like personal data or diaries or something like that?
So the data is, you've noticed, is not public. So what we did is we, actually very little of that, right? But we were worried about it. So we gave it to CHM for review. So to make sure that before they put it out, it was all cleaned up. And of course, guess what? They never reviewed it, so it never went out. Because it's a huge job to do it, and then you have to ask Xerox and whatever, because there are emails in there probably, right?
I asked because when I got the Wang Writer, the word processing system that I've got out there, I got a bunch of floppy disks with it, and I was reading through, I pulled data off, I was reading through the data, and I got on one of them, and it was like notes from a psychiatric hospital. And I got like 2 sentences into it, and I was like, I gotta light this thing on fire. Like, there's zero reason that I should ever see any of this stuff. So I was just curious. Like, 150 packs is a colossal amount of data. I wanted to know what juicy stuff you guys found. But
well, same thing. We don't read it. We just send it. If there's something that doesn't look like we should read it, we don't. We just send it to people, and so Xerox and CHM will figure it out. But it's hard for them too. They don't know how to do it. It's too much work.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever found data or something that scared you?
Me?
Yeah. Yes, you. The guy that asked the question.
Well, aside from the psychiatric hospital stuff, also on the Wang Writer, we found somebody's poetry, which was not great. But we found we recently got a platter from a CPU5 system, and we're like digging through the data on it. And I in the video I was like, and I want to show you guys a really cool program that we found, and it was King. Which is like Hammurabi, I think, is the game that it's and I showed it, and I pointed at it on the screen, but directly above that was a file named Girl82. So the #1 comment I got in that video was, "What's Girl82?" It's exactly what you think it is. And of course, that was the first file I opened.
Always wipe your drives, folks.
Go ahead. And it's one I can't show.
I had a question for David. So I don't actually watch that many YouTube channels. I subscribe to like maybe 10 or so, which is probably ironic. But a few weeks ago, I sat down at my computer, had my microwave pizza, and I was new Veritasium videos out. So watching Veritasium, and next thing you know, I'm sitting here holding my pizza, going, I know that guy. Can you tell us how that came to be?
Yeah, that was. If you guys, does everybody know who Veritasium is? First of all,
Yes.
yeah, dude's got like 15 million subscribers. When we talk big, like the gulf that is between my subscriber count and David's subscriber count is the same as the gulf between his subscriber count and Veritasium's subscriber count. Dude's on another level. So one of his producers. That's the level we're talking about here. One of his producers reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do an episode on vacuum tubes, and if you search vacuum tube computer on YouTube, you're the only person that shows up. And I was like, I knew cornering that market would pay off someday. And of course, I thought it was a hoax at first, because I was like, yeah, right. Okay, sure, but I'll play along. And so, like, that night, we got on a Zoom call with 2 of his producers. And I was like, what kind of operation are you guys running over here? All right. So we get to talking, and we trade ideas and stuff. And he said, okay, we'll be in touch. And then I didn't hear anything for like 2 months. And I would send like follow-up emails every couple of weeks, like, hey, just want to let you know if you need any, if you guys want any research done or want any pictures of anything, I'm happy to supply. And then all of a sudden they were like, okay, so he's going to be there in like 2 weeks. I was like, dope. Let's do this. So sure enough, Derek Muller, Mr. Veritasium, shows up. Dude's been on like Wired autocomplete. Like this is like proper celebrity status. He shows up at my place with like a backpack, and that's it. I'm like, what? All right. And so it's funny because he was just as disorganized as the rest of us because he's a human. And we sat down and filmed all day, and they hacked it up into a pretty good video. He is one of the most humble and nicest guys I've ever met. It was a true pleasure hanging out with him. I asked him all of the questions that you would want to ask a large YouTuber, and he answered every single one of them. It was amazing. It also made me realize how much on a different level he is. It's like, sitting down with Adam Savage or something, which is funny because that Adam Savage has been in a couple of his episodes. So it was like I was totally starstruck, but it was just total blind chance. I managed to answer your question. It came about because I managed to corner the market on vacuum tube computers.
All right, cool.
So, June, I'll jump back a question here. What's your favorite episode you've done, or favorite piece of hardware, or
Well, I mean, it's the 128, of course.
Yeah. So I did the 128 for Commodore, and June's broke, and I felt guilty.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, the power supply went out. I think probably.
Oh, I didn't do the power supply.
Well, see, there you go. You're totally
I bought
absolved.
the power supply.
No, I think it was one of those Deltas. It was kind of funny power supply layout. But honestly, I don't really have a particular favorite one. I think the one I had the most fun with was probably the one where I start talking about the joysticks and the
Right.
CIAs, and how to read them and work with them. Because in that one, I actually had friends come over and help me out with filming and do the actor part and that kind of thing, and we were just having a load of fun with it.
Right. What advice would you give to somebody that wants to start a channel for YouTube? And that's an old question, but I'm still going to ask it.
That's always a hard question, right?
Yeah, stay away. Don't do it.
Well, I mean, if you got the passion for whatever it is you're working on, that'll come through in your video, and you'll get more people to look at it. But like, if you don't have that underarching drive, it's going to be real hard to get through. I think the biggest problem, at least for me, is like I have these great ideas and I want to go and put them together into a video, but in my particular content type, I have to do a lot of diagramming and a lot of post-editing so that I can get the ideas across. And a lot of these abstract concepts, like even like for the 128's MMU, is just so abstract to the average programmer. Like no one even really has to think about it that much. but it's crazy powerful. So when I go and do the diagramming and explanation for it, it has to both be interesting and well diagrammed, but it also has to, you know, it takes a lot out of me when I do it, because it takes me weeks to get these diagrams done. And so the production just goes slower and slower, and if you don't have that underlying drive, you'll never get through it. So pick something you're interested in, like you have a real strong passion with, and that you really want to drive through it, and you'll be successful. But that's the trick.
Right. Cool. Jeri, I'll ask you a version of that question. Not so much YouTube, but what advice would you give for somebody that's starting a business or transitioning to being technology and owner and founder? And
oh wow. Just do it. It's not as scary as you think. I've done a lot of things in my career. I was a professional race car driver. Scared to do it in the beginning and jumped in and learned everything I needed to do. Later, I owned a chain of retail computer stores, which was equally scary. Like, you know, can I make a go of it? And we were quite successful with that. And then I moved to Silicon Valley and brute forced my way into a bunch of startups down there without having a college degree, and tricked a bunch of founders to let me do some really cool designs for them, kind of cut my teeth on engineering kind of the hard way. And then doing my own venture-backed startup was extremely scary, because there's just different things that you need to learn. But, you know, I think basically, if you can just take very small steps moving forward and just have faith that you're going to be able to maneuver, you can get there. And it's the same for a YouTube channel or running a business.
Cool. What Taylor and Amy, what have you done that has a lasting impact, would you say?
Nothing. Okay, I got one. We did a song called 42.
We're really proud of it.
Could you sing it for us now?
We cannot.
Oh, yes, please.
We can barely talk.
Parody of Taylor Swift's 22, but it's 42 because of Douglas Adams.
Oh, so it's a copyright violation, and your YouTube would come down or something.
We're not monetized.
We can't monetize
that. But if you go to our channel, you can listen to it.
Right.
But we've done a couple like music video kind of things. One is on Gödel's theorem to the tune of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song.
Right.
Yeah, we were on a walk, and I don't know why I was talking about Gödel's incompleteness theorem, but I totally was. And Amy was like, just out of the blue, she said Teenage Mutant Ninja Gödel, and suddenly the entire song appeared fully formed in my head, and Gödel power. And that is one of the first, that might be the first video we ever posted. It's one of the first 4. So yeah, for the Venn diagram overlap of people who are into Gödel's incompleteness theorem and the foundational crisis of mathematics and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for the 10 of you.
There are 10 people that are very happy with that.
We think you'll like it.
What IBM Dave, what do you do to keep people coming back for more? Do you dangle something? Do you just keep trying slow and steady?
That's something I need to improve on. We've all done the routes where you think, well, maybe if I do a video per day or something, scale up, you know, my content and kick more videos out or something else. I don't know. I've had, of course, more reactions to some certain videos than others. We had the discussion on YouTube comments before. I once received a comment on one of my videos of, "You shouldn't have done this video." How do you respond to that? And that's almost like or telling the person, encourage them to create their own YouTube channel, you know, at that point, to react to that comment. I don't know. I've always gone with the topics I had at hand. A lot of time I found it organic as well, to where, and I didn't really, come to a point where I did this on my own to say, hey, let's turn on the camera sort of thing. It started as a venture, I think, to fill a void of what I felt was out there, that I could put content out there that was relating to what I was doing, and it just became a little bit more organic. And but I even have had cases that 2 hours before I made a video where all of a sudden I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good subject matter, and that's what I can go with, and I'll run with it, and let's just start the camera and let's do this. Right. So I've been very sporadic to that. You know, the early days, you look at you overanalyze your subscriber count. You look at that and you just focus, and you're like overjoyed. I got another subscriber. I got another 2 subscribers. You know, you're going through that, and I don't know. Everyone talks about the YouTube algorithm of trying to figure out what pulls in more people and content. I really, as far as content, I did what I thought would be entertaining, what I would have fun with. It's up to my audience, just like that guy that says you should not have made this video. Well, he's probably not hanging around my channel no more. He's probably not watching my videos. He's not my intended audience anyway. Right. If he's unhappy with that. And I mean, occasionally I get feedback of where I did something very good, and there are times also that I got feedback of when I did something very wrong that people felt. I haven't tried to analyze or change my content for how I could gain more subscribers. I think you're chasing your own tail at that point. Right. Do what makes you happy. If the subscribers like it, they're going to come and comment and react and respond to your video. If they don't, they're going to move on.
Yep. Same question to you, Marc. And I watch your channel, and so it's almost a loaded question. What lasting impact would you say you've had, or what have you done that's had a lasting impact? And you guys you've gone and gotten programs that nobody ever saw before, and on the ropes and stuff. What stands out to you?
Why do I get all the tough questions?
You're highly educated.
It's because you have more subscribers than
You'll get way past me. You are way more entertaining.
Don't be so modest, man. I'm just copying you.
It's hard for me to answer, because the goal. I know I'm in a position that I don't have to do this for money. It just happened, right? The channel started because I was building an R2D2. I was making a build log. I wanted to illustrate my build log with snippets of video, so I posted the video on YouTube to refer it to my build log. And then eventually and then the electronics turns when I got some stuff from my company that they wanted to throw out. The first 10 gig scope I ever saw in Bell Labs, and I bought one from my company later on, and they wanted to throw it away. Of course, it was terribly obsolete, but no, you don't do that. So I took that in and I repaired it, and then while I repaired it, and since I had a little bit of experience with YouTube, I put my repair on the YouTube channel to help people that have the same instrument. Why not? And that sort of became popular. So I started to do more of that, and then eventually, and making the video became the point, right? So because I teach myself something when I do it, and I'll teach other people. So it became a celebration of engineering, of electrical engineering channel. Really, teaches you the basic. So I'm not really trying to make something that lasts. I am trying to share the love of engineering, and I think the thing is exciting on its own, right? And if somebody out of that goes in college and does a double E and says, "Oh, CuriousMarc, I watched your video and now I'm an engineer." I say, "Ha ha, I've done it right." Or somebody else tells me, "Thanks, I had the same HP thing and finally I got enough courage to go through it." And like, "Yay, I did it." And I think obviously the Apollo stuff is, I think but it's not only me, right? It's the whole group. Stands out. But yeah, that those feats of engineering, in general, that those feats of engineering are known and not forgotten, right?
I want to copy him as well, because we've had a few people say, I found 2 women on YouTube talking about retro computers. After I woke back up from being blacked out on the ground, I found my daughter and I showed it to her, and she loves it. So we have a lot of people saying, I showed this to my kid, or I am a woman, and it's so nice to see women. I'm sure you guys get that too. But we did look around a little bit, and kind of like there are not 2 females that we could find that talk to each other about retro computers. I think this is it. But hopefully we don't want that to be just us.
Comments are really rewarding. People keep commenting.
Yeah, we're still small enough
and
that we mostly get positive comments. Right. And we tend to just ignore it. We do get, being females, we do get some things that you only get if you're a female on the internet. But it's not been as bad as we thought it might be, which is nice.
I think I have about a 200-word kill list in my moderation system. I do occasionally get some trolls, but yeah, just like you said, Marc, just boop, they're gone.
Yeah. I get you have the moon hoaxers.
What, say again?
I have a special category, the moon hoaxers. That's so.
There you go.
Only 200 of them, and out of those 200 accounts, there's probably only 10 or 20 people. Is the same people that have many accounts?
Because
not
NASA,
that many.
Yeah, because NASA made elaborate communication systems for communicating with the spacecraft at a distance to further on the notion of it a hoax, right?
Well, they wanted to film it and make a fake, but the director insisted that they film it on location.
So I'll pick up on something Taylor and Amy just said, and I'll direct it to all the females here. What particular challenges would you say you've met with being a female in the YouTube environment? Well, I was going to go right down the road, so I'm starting with June.
Oh, I just get a few people making snide comments or otherwise commenting about how I look instead of about the contents, or trying to show me up in technical ability, and it's like, I just don't have time with that. Just stop, go away.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely have to have a thick skin.
Yeah. Jeri?
I think it's the same.
Yeah. You guys?
I mean, less mansplaining than we thought we might get. When we first got into this, one of the first things we did, shout out to Coco Nation, because before we had 200 people that cared that we were on the internet. They found us somehow and asked us to be on the show back when it was Coco Talk. And we talked long and hard about did we want to do it, because they do a little, Zoomy panel or whatever, and it is white man, and we didn't know how we'd be treated. And fortunately, they were absolutely the most kind. I mean, we've, in general, found the retro community to be the most kind and generous and welcoming, so we've been very lucky. But we had long conversations about, do we even want to do this, and how is this going to go for us? So you really have to think about things more than you might otherwise if you weren't a minority in the space.
Dave Murray, 8-Bit Guy, what do you do to keep the accuracy of the content you provide? My biggest fear is saying a single word wrong when I'm on video.
Oh, that's a challenge. One of the biggest challenges is, especially when it's an obscure thing, I go around and I try to ask around on the internet, and sometimes I can't find the answer. Now, when I make the video, the guy that knows the answer always comes out, of course, at the end. But and they'll say, well, why didn't you research this, David? And of course, I spent like 3 weeks asking around on, forums and stuff. Does anybody know the answer to this kind of thing? And sometimes I even run in and, there's an 8-bit guy hate group out there, right? So sometimes I'll run into one of those guys. I ran into one just recently when I was researching on keyboard cursor keys. I went to this Discord group on old terminals, and some guy there says, "I'm not going to help you because I hate you, and you blow up IBM computers and stuff, and I'm not going to help you." So if you get it wrong, it's your problem or whatever. So I encounter that kind of stuff too. And then of course the irony is he'll be the first one complaining if I got it wrong in the video at the end, because and. But it is definitely a challenge, and I definitely do a lot of research on stuff. And back to you were asking about some of my proudest videos are some of my documentary videos that I do, like on Commodore or on like some of the Texas computer history and stuff like that. And those took enormous, sometimes months of research to get that stuff. And sometimes I had nothing to go on. But yeah, I obviously strive for as much accuracy as possible. And then, I have a lot of friends, many of them who are actually in this audience right now, like Kevin and Jim and various people, and I will ask them, and if they don't know, they'll ask somebody else. And sometimes I still get things wrong, but
Sean, same question.
Well, when you have no idea what you're doing and everything you say is wrong and you have that expectation set, then you're good. No, I do a ton of research. Like I usually don't know too much about it going in. So that, and I try to show some process of learning in the videos. But yeah, I do try to make sure I'm using terminology correct. Even if I didn't really know the terminology beforehand, I try to get myself to have an understanding. And if I don't, then yeah, definitely there are comments. Usually respectful comments like, "Oh, well, actually this and this and this." And, I like those kinds of comments. We're all learning together.
Who else? Anybody have a story about staying accurate, or how do you keep yourself educated?
You don't read Wikipedia. the number of times that the comments are through Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is helpful to get a vague idea of something, but if it's anything well, it's wrong, but the percentage that's wrong is 80%, right? Something like that. It's very, very wrong, and something that you have some depth. But the things that you get corrected pretty quickly, right? If you did something. So if it's, and there are some, of course, AH comments in there, right? And some people that treat the AH comments and they pile up on them. But if somebody does it and it's a respectful answer and he gets the right story and it's not from the Wikipedia, he will immediately get the love and he gets pinned as the first comment for the correction.
Okay.
Yeah, likewise. I got exactly the same experience. It's like if I have something that I get corrected on, I actually tell my audience I want to be corrected in the comments because that's how we all learn. Like I'm never going to be 100% correct, and I know that. And in a lot of my videos, I've said things off the cuff that are not true, and I've had to go back and correct them either in the discussion or whatever. And then this is kind of where I get to hating YouTube because it's like I can't go back and fix that. I can't patch my video like I can my software.
Right.
But if people can learn from that experience and it's a genuine correction, with good constructive feedback, that's awesome. I want everybody to learn from that kind of thing because I know it's not just me.
Well, that's a feature that's actually missing from YouTube, that you could correct yourself when you say something bad, then you go, "Oh, no commenter, so and so, thank you very much. Say this, and he's right, and I'm wrong," right? I wish I could do that on some videos, and it's really missing.
Yeah, I'll say the wrong word. I'm thinking the right word. I'll say the wrong word. And then you have that text pop up on the screen, where I correct myself. So, yeah.
3 times the video for me.
I think a variant of that you just made me think about is I've done some videos that took a lot of research, months or even years before I could do them. I'm very proud, finally I've magnetic logic or something. I knew nothing about it. Took a very long time to do it. And then I post it and it gets 2,000 views or something. It's a little bit agonizing, but now that some of these videos have been up for about 15 years, every once in a while, and I'll just randomly look at my YouTube email and someone's like, "Thank you very much for explaining this thing," and I'm like, "Oh, well then it was worthwhile."
Right.
But that dopamine hit.
You can never predict how a video is going to do well. There's some that I do in 5 minutes and I have 1 million views. And some that they're my best try. I spent research, I did the animation, and I learned so much, and they just go straight to the bottom. I think we're lucky, right? We're YouTubers. Imagine people doing real movies where they sunk 20 million or 100 millions in it, and they have no clue how it's going to do in the box office.
Well, it's worse than that. In some cases, we're doing like 1980s documentation videos, like with the slides and stupid little bars everywhere.
The Sharknado of YouTube videos.
So that's actually a question I have for you.
Oh, yeah?
Because I've watched a lot of your stuff. I am curious, what is your personal favorite video that you've made? And is it also the video that got the most views?
I asked him that, and he wouldn't answer me. So.
That's a good question. I don't actually know which of my videos got the most views. I think they might correlate. My favorite video was the floppy raid, where I hosted a website from a raid of floppy disks.
If you haven't seen that video, watch it. It is epic.
So it went like I put it up, website hit the floppy disk directly. That's where the HTML and the images were located, and then that somehow wound up getting on the front page of Hacker News. I also turned off caching, so every request went directly to the floppy disks. So I have like video of the floppy disk raid, which was like a couple stacks of USB floppy drives just going nuts. Yeah, so that was my favorite video. You know, I learned how to do some Linuxy things that I didn't know before in doing the video, and it was just a ridiculous concept. And then it kind of took on a little bit of a life of its own during the time I had it up and running, people going to it. You know, it was on Reddit and Hacker News, and I think that might be my most viewed video, but I've had a couple that have done well since then, but that's certainly my favorite.
Where'd you get the idea for that? Because that's insane. I would not have thought of that.
It's been in my head for years. I wanted to try to do that. Yeah, so now I'm trying to collect zip disks for unrelated reasons.
LS120, LS120.
Go ahead.
Bill, a question for you. Are we going to
yes,
people from the audience? So, the question is getting thin and people are hungry and sleepy. Right. Maybe we won't.
So we have half an hour more to go, but I'd like to open it up. If anybody has any questions, we have a microphone right here. I'd love to have your questions because I'm running out of them. So, but what do you guys use for post editing? What's your favorite editors?
DaVinci Resolve.
DaVinci?
Final Cut.
What?
Final Cut Pro.
Okay.
Do you have the paid version of Resolve?
Yeah, but you don't need it. Like, the free version of Resolve is so good.
I have it too.
I just paid for it because I was so thankful for them releasing like this awesome free version.
Yeah. It's really good. That's what I use, is DaVinci Resolve. The free version,
and
it broke.
And it works on Linux, which is a plus.
Yeah, that is actually a major plus. Yeah, I used to use Final Cut Pro initially, and then I switched over to Resolve because I switched everything over to Linux, and my productivity tanked because I couldn't do voiceovers for crap. It's just its voiceover stuff is based around ADR editing, and it's just so hard to do in post. So I've gone back to going to Mac and using Final Cut Pro in my latest stuff.
Jeri, do you use post editors these days, or do you have people who do?
Well, I don't know what they use at work, but Premiere.
Okay. Yeah, Marc.
Final Cut Pro, but we get to the questions at some point.
I don't do edits, but DaVinci Resolve, I have the free version. It hardly gets used for me.
Right. Straight from VHS to YouTube.
Talk to the camera and stream it. Stream it.
Sent by carrier pigeon.
Open shot.
Haven't heard of it.
Nice. Linux. Oh.
OpenShot has a high keyboard, by the way.
I googled like free Linux video editor, and then I watched some YouTube videos on how to use OpenShot, and that's what we use.
We also don't do a ton of editing. It's mostly big blocks. Yeah.
So yes, first question, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. trying to figure out how to word this exactly. Are you concerned about the inevitable end of YouTube, having all your eggs in one basket kind of thing? I mean, we all know it's going to happen at some point. We've all seen the MySpaces of the world go under, so I'm just curious.
I'm still on MySpace.
Retro to the core.
I worry about that a little bit. I just arranged to do some oral histories at a dinner that we held at our office, and I reached out to the Computer History Museum, and they wrote back and said, we don't take digital submissions like that. And so it'll go up on YouTube, but it's like were some chip designers, which I think their stories are going to be valuable 1,000 years from now. Like, how do you document that and save it for generations?
So I've actually been kind of looking into that. I'm sort of an open source nut, so I use Linux a lot. That's what my main system is. And yeah, being locked into one platform, that's definitely a concern for me. So I started looking into things like library. I think it's also known as Odyssey now. And they've got a YouTube sync routine where they can actually pull down your videos from YouTube and stick them in the library. And that's going onto the blockchain, not like the Bitcoin blockchain, but whatever library uses as its back end. So like it's a decent archiving system.
Dave Jones talks about how to get into several channels. Okay, yeah. So, yes, go ahead. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm a student in computer engineering right now. So actually I'm here because my dad grew up with his dad working at Tandy, and now he got the Tandy PCs from there, and now I'm doing like FPGA type stuff. And so what he has been continuously talking about is, what do y'all think of multi-core 8-bit computing?
I would love to hook up 64 6502s, but I'm not a programmer. You know, the hardware is easy, but
it sounds like black magic.
So this is actually something that I've actually thought about, but on perhaps a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
In the 70s, the AM2901 was an extremely popular chip. They used it in the Centurion. That's where I learned about it. But PDP, DEC used it extensively. It's a 4-bit, what they call bit slice ALU. And essentially what that means is that you can cascade them together. So the Centurion's an 8-bit system, so they would use 2 of them to create an 8-bit ALU. But there's no rule saying that you can't cascade 30 of these things. So why not? Why can't I have a 478-bit ALU? Like, let's do something bonkers. So I think it would be cool to do.
In
I'm
tubes.
not smart enough to do it.
It's a good balance to your 1-bit computer. I mean, the average will be fine.
I have an idea. I'm looking forward to your YouTube channel. You have FPGA skills. Let's see it.
So I do want to point out, I'm not 100% certain. Do you know offhand, maybe, Jeri? The parallax propeller, if that's 16 or 18-bit or 8-bit?
I don't know.
Okay, but that is a multi-core microcontroller, definitely worth looking into. And it's been done. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing it, but definitely a cool idea.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Bill. How are you doing? Jeff Brace from Vintage Computer Federation. I'm a showrunner of VCF East. My question is, if you're starting out YouTube, those of you who have like the larger channels, do you have any simple advice for how to grow your channel, or what is the key, if you have it, if you know it, how to get bigger?
That is also our question.
But in my experience, consistency and just slowly improving over time. So I try to release on a consistent schedule with kind of consistent content at the core, and then branching off a little bit from, that core, like trying to see what other things that people interested in these topics would be interested in. But yeah, I would say probably the number one thing is to just do it and do it consistently. And like you said, do something that you're passionate about.
I think Bill can help with that.
What was the question?
Get featured on Hackaday.
Write something you're passionate about. We'll pick it up. Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. Email me.
If the passion comes through, your channel will grow. It's basically one of them.
Yeah. And everybody here, I recognize the passion in your channels. You know, it's yeah, absolutely. So, yes, go ahead.
Hi. My question is inspired by one of CuriousMarc's videos, but it's for everyone. I really like the video where you use the teletype machine as a Linux terminal. So my question is for everyone, what is your favorite, maybe something you discovered that people might be considered a vintage piece of code or a vintage piece of tech that is still hanging around in modern systems?
Gee, I keep getting all the tough questions. I mean, so much of what's in modern computer dates back to the older ones. I'm going to repeat what I said before, is that the more I look at older computers, the more I say, that's still used today, right? Pipelining, yeah, it's in the IBM 360 from 1964, right? And the more we go, the more we discover that we ain't invented anything. So it's not one particular thing, but just the realization that we build on top of our predecessor, and that particularly in the military and defense effort, there are superb efforts that you're not aware of, which kind of makes me scared of what are they doing today, right? If they pull going to the moon out of their military pocket, really. It's something that went out of the military and went back to the, jumped to the public stuff and shouldn't have. And you imagine they do the same thing now behind your back, right? It's just... I still remember on the... I was at University of Maryland in the 1990 something. And some guy from the NSA came in. High-speed optics. That's been my stuff forever. Some guy from the NSA. Well, do you have something that can record half an hour of 10 gigabit per second with optics? And we're like, okay, what are those guys doing? Right? And that's 30 years ago, right? Wow. Right?
I think it's interesting that some of these things are almost cyclical. I'm just thinking back to MOSFET transistors with metal gate. You know, it was like they moved away from it because it didn't work very well, and now every transistor on a processor is metal gate, and it was abandoned for a very long time. And you hear about this time and time again, just because maybe tools are better now than they were then, or the laws of physics, like now we're bumping up against it, and there's this motivation to like now go reinvestigate optics or materials and semiconductors.
But I would say that old stuff is a source of inspiration for new stuff. It's really the important thing. The more I learn about the old stuff, it makes me think of something that I could use to implement something new.
That's the concept of a flip-flop. Everything today, everything in your computer is built around flip-flops. The flip-flop, you can take like a modern transistor flip-flop design and compare it to a vacuum tube flip-flop design from 1945, and it looks identical. It just hasn't changed. It's just gotten smaller. So like, the question was, what is stuck around from the past? And like, I think that's what it is. Like, that fundamental design has just gotten smaller, but it's still the same. It's still it's still basically 80 years old.
Basically Moore's law. But I think that's from what I get out of it is I learn tricks that I can apply and do apply actually in my professional life all the time.
We have a saying in software that was kind of stamped by a guy by the name of JWZ or Jamie Zubinski, who worked at Mozilla. Like every program that reads email eventually grows to have a half-baked implementation of Lisp inside, and that really rings true too. Like you find this kind of thing happening all over the place. Like you look at Apple Mail; it has a rule subsystem built into it for filtering your mail, which is a kind of just a half-baked version of Lisp.
Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm sure all of you are folks who have been sort of doing tinkering and experimenting and doing personal DIY projects from even before the time that you had YouTube careers. Are there any personal DIY projects that you wish you could go back in time because you think that they would have made for really excellent videos to showcase to people?
So I kind of worked over at Google, and I worked on Google Glass. There was a personal wearable system that I was building out of a parallax propeller, in fact, that I'd like to go back to at some point and discuss, but I can't really find a way to fit it into the channel, so probably never.
That's a good question for the panel here. How many of you were breaking things apart and putting them back together when you were kids?
Oh, yes.
I magnetized the CRT of my family TV by the time I was in second grade. Yeah.
Excellent start.
I built a Star Trek shuttlecraft in my backyard about 20 years ago. That would have been probably a pretty cool video.
Yeah. So, thank you.
I built a relay calculator. That was the one that got shown on Veritasium. And I did it before I started the YouTube channel, and it's like a terrible design. And I've completely forgotten about it. But because of the Veritasium thing, I've been getting tons of questions about it. Like, do you have the design plans for it? Do you have the schematics? What was that? And I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know. Right? I was just making it up as I went, and I was dumb. But I think that one would be a really fun one to revisit someday.
Yes.
Given that you document old technology while it's still working and some of the people that built it and used it are still around, have any of you considered your roles as historians?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of tend to think that some of my documentary videos might outlive me unless somebody comes along and makes a better one, like after I'm gone or something like that. But
yeah, the videos I do, I just turn on the camera and talk, and one day Bil Herd will be gone, but these things will be hanging around YouTube, getting hits eventually.
So I'm actually part of a classic computer Discord server where we work with some of the guys from CHM as well. And some of the things I'm trying to do lately has been scanning in some documentation specifically for Al. Because there's a lot of stuff that I've got that, like I said, doesn't have any documentation or is otherwise weird that wasn't documented anywhere. So, it's good to preserve that stuff, and that's what I try to do, even though I'm doing videos for the Commodore 128 at the same time.
Well, you asked a question about the 2-meg clock and when it kicks in and everything, and it was actually something that was long gone as far as the original memory, and I had to break out equipment and everything. So that was interesting to trace that down and figure it out. Yeah, and that was community driven, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally was, actually. That was from the Vice developers. So right. I actually do that also as a side kind of thing.
Right. Jeri?
Yeah, I find myself kind of torn on some of the projects I do because, I've destroyed some retro hardware, doing them. And I feel really bad about that.
I mean, that's part of the thing, right? And I actually applaud David for showing that. You are going to break important equipment when you try to repair it. It happens to us all the time. Now, the trick is to repair it afterwards to get yourself out. But that's part of the business. That's part of the business.
How many chips did you pull out of the, I can't remember the model number, but you pulled some 16 chips?
Not yet 25. I can't remember. It's close to 30 chips.
That was the one with the crowbar circuit.
Something like that.
Didn't work on, right?
And I wasn't going to let it go. I was going to revive the machine, right? Yeah, it's my own darn fault, right? I didn't put a crowbar on it, and people told me it's a known failure, and you're supposed to do it.
Right. And next question, please. Thank you for yours.
Thank you. So what kind of ratio do you have between how much you actually film and how much actually gets used? And I guess follow-up is for somebody who's at the lower, hobbyist, beginner level, would you think it's better to focus on doing, quick videos, quick film it, get out there, or to, film a lot and edit it and try to make something that's more produced?
My Hackaday videos were 1.5 hours per minute. That's how long it took between all the technology and then the post-editing and stuff. So each minute cost me 1 hour or more. So you guys?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I fight for every minute of my videos. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. I found that the more I film, the less likely I'm going to edit it and put it out. I have hard drives full of things I could put out, and it's just I'm just not going to edit that.
Yeah, we've started a live broadcast just due to my disdain for editing. So we just do a live every Friday.
Yeah, but when you do it live, it takes forever. So you asked a question about not showing your mistakes. We do show the mistake, but we don't show the parts where we maybe it's this, and we try it, and it's not that, and maybe it's this, and we try it, it's not that, and then we got that wrong. So in the videos, it's kind of magical because you always go to the next step, and it's all linear. But in reality, it goes. You have a million stuff that you think are not working, and they do work. But actually, that's what makes the video interesting. The more you can concentrate it, the more interesting it gets. So there's a lot that doesn't get shown, but it's not interesting. And then you get all the exciting points, which, by the way, are the only ones you remember, right? When I look at the footage, I went there, I did that, I can't remember. You only remember the aha moments, right? Where you piece things together, and that's the rewarding thing, and that's the one you want to show in the video. But I would say then you have the film stuff, then you have to explain the stuff. And that's even more. It's 20% of the video is done once we're done filming, and then if I have 2 days of filmings, I'll have 2 weeks of creating the animation, explaining it, researching it. So I would go way, way, way faster restoring stuff if I wasn't doing the videos. And sometimes do it. I just know, screw it. I need those 3 instruments repaired. I'll do it without video, right? And I'm done in a week. Right?
So I think a lot of it comes down to, what do you want to do? Do you want to work on hardware and just show that, or do you want to be a filmmaker? I think I don't know. I'm speaking for me, but I'm going to speak on behalf of everybody up here because I think we all made a conscious decision at some point early on that said, I want to be a filmmaker, and the topic that I'm going to make films about is retro hardware, is old computers or whatever. But we are first and foremost filmmakers, because if you just want to get this thing fixed and going, filming gets in the way of everything. If I need to repair something, it will take 3 to 4 times as long if I want to film it, as opposed to if I just pushed the camera in the corner and sat down and did it.
Like 5 to 10, right?
Yeah. It depends.
But we're storytellers, right? Right. If you don't like telling stories and editing videos, don't start a YouTube channel. You have to like that. You have to have pleasure in it, or it will just be a drag.
So I'm going to echo that. I probably similar to what you were saying, probably close to an hour sometimes for every minute, if not more, of final video. But a lot of people think, oh, well, David, you're spending so much time editing. And of course, the thing is, I don't know where you draw the line between what is editing and what is not. Editing really only takes me maybe 3 hours for a video, for a 15-minute video. It's all of the planning and the scripting, and then the filming, and then the animations and illustrations, and all of those things are extremely time consuming. But I'm not even sure. The original question, I got the impression maybe he was asking about how much B-roll do you have versus how much actually winds up in the video. And that's something I've noticed. I am very different from some other YouTubers that I've talked to. They'll have 4 or 5 hours of video and they edit that down to 15 minutes. And I'm a little bit the opposite. I'll probably only have maybe for a 15-minute video, I probably only have maybe 20 minutes of actual video, and I've cut out 5 because I'm real. When I go to use the camera, I just literally just get some people just let it roll the whole time, and I'm just okay, I need this shot. Start the camera, I do the shot. If I mess up, I'll delete that clip right now and redo it. And so I don't end up with this massive amounts of hours and hours of video to sort through at the end.
So on the topic of that, I was talking with Veritasium about that exact same thing, because I do the same thing. If I mess up, I just delete. Nobody needs to see that, right? But Veritasium, when he was there, the camera ran the entire time. It was on the whole time, and I was like, if this comes out to be great for me, I'm going to be on camera for maybe 5 minutes, right? And you have 4.5 hours of footage here, easy. I was like, how on earth do you sort this? How are you going to find the 5 minutes? And he had a really interesting solution in that he said, we've used whatever the learning models or whatever is AI essentially to get a transcript of the entire thing, everything that was said throughout the entire thing with timestamps. And he says, and then I tell the editors, because he doesn't do editing anymore. He says, I tell the editor, I thought, when we were talking about triodes, and we talked about it in the first half of the video. They'll just do a Control F for triode prior to a certain timestamp, and then they can sort the video that way. So that's, if you are one of the people, it all comes down to what you're comfortable and how you feel comfortable editing. But if you're one of the people that likes to let just the camera roll the entire time, that might be a good tool in your toolbox. That was a little tidbit of information from.
I had to learn to do basically what Dave said, which is I would shoot a scene, then run over to the editor, make sure it's good, and then shoot another scene. And I had started out by doing big, long reels like we're talking, and I had continuity problems. I'd say, oh, and here's the transistor, and then 10 minutes later, I show the transistor, you know. So I had to do it linearly to keep the story right. So, all right. I see you're cut off. Can we do 2 more questions? Cool. Next question, please.
Great seeing all of you. Really enjoy your content. Appreciate it. I'm known online as Chronologically Gaming, where I'm playing every single video game in order of release, and I wanted to know what was the first video game you ever played? I'll even take educational. What was the very first video game you ever played?
Omega Race on the VIC-20.
Something on Nintendo, probably Super Mario or Bubble Bobble. Yeah, probably Bubble Bobble.
Our neighbor had an Atari, so it was Frogger.
Arcade?
The Atari, whatever the Atari version. I don't know. It was like this big, man.
Gorf on the VIC-20.
Probably Asteroids in the arcade.
Dark Castle on the Mac.
The first game I played was Pong.
Pong.
I dated myself a little bit there, but I'm that old. I mean,
like brown box or in the arcade Pong?
Sears.
Sears.
The Pong that you plugged into your home TV, your console TV.
Yeah, I used to go down to Sears with a handful of quarters on Saturday morning and do it.
I think my Pong machine says J.C. Penney on it, even.
Yeah. So if you want to meet the creator of the Pong machine, he'll be at VCF West August 4th and 5th. So go ahead down the end of the line.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, maybe something on the Tandy. Atari?
It's arcade Pac-Man for me.
It'd be, yeah, no, I can't even think of arcade, but it would be Galaga or something. But I remember distinctly like Star Trek text-based.
Yes.
That we were playing on the Tandy 1000 EX, so you had to switch out the disc because there was no hard drive. Yeah, that's one of my strongest memories, I think, of doing the text-based games, at least.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Which one are you on right now? Where are you in your? Where are you in your progression?
I'm currently in May 1982, so I'm just about to play Omega Race on the VIC-20, and I just played Gorf on the VIC-20. So we're trekking forward. It started in 1971, and we're about 2,000 something games in right now.
Holy God!
Excellent idea.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for taking my question. I work for a large television station in Houston, and one of the things we always say is you want to close the loop on a story. And with RetroTech, I can see all y'all's passion for this, and I've got it too. My childhood was messing with stuff this guy built, and now that I'm here and I'm seeing this stuff, my passion's reignited. But there's this frustration I've got, and I wonder why the loop doesn't seem to be closed. We all have put all this passion into restoring these old machines, and we document the journey as to how to repair them, and then once they're up and running, what happens next? How do we put these things back in service to do anything useful? I've rebuilt so many of these things. I've taken where I work, and people come in my office and go, oh, is that a so-and-so machine? I'm like, yeah, it is. What are you doing with it?
Well, I've got an answer for that one. So,
please.
I think about that quite a lot, actually. Like, how do I actually use these machines? And that's kind of why I like to upgrade them and install, like, Linux on an old machine or something to see how useful it can be. But I built 2 websites, frogfind.com and 68k.news, which are meant to work on any web browser. Like, if your machine can connect to the internet, they can render these pages. So, like, I built it with my compact Macs in mind, like an SE30 running Netscape 2. But, like, text mode browsers work. So, yeah, it's kind of nice to just sit, no distractions, on, like, an old PowerBook or something and be able to read the news. Yeah. That's my contribution to it.
So my channel is actually specifically aimed at that question. Part of the thing is that once you've built this machine, once you've got it working again, what do you do, right? Well, the first thing I decided was to start writing games for it, write some software, make it do something interesting. And it kind of like flows from there, right? Like there are a lot of ways to get these machines working. There's a lot of ways to use them. Just because they're old doesn't mean that they're not relevant or that they can't do anything useful today. It's just how you use them, how the software works, how you interface with other systems. So, I mean, my channel's currently focused on the 128, but this is relevant for just about any machine we have here, or even like elsewhere.
Anybody else?
It's about the journey.
I think we get the most pleasure out of actually doing repairs and stuff, but I know plenty of people that every day they'll log on and play either a new game or an old game on their Coco 3. You know, they're using it for the way it was used originally and enjoying it.
Cool.
For me personally, I have a huge fascination in business class machines, which means that inevitably some poor peon was sitting at a desk, hunched over the terminal, going, "I hate this bloody machine." Right? I want that experience.
You do the Ken Sheriff trick after we repair a computer. It'll crack a Bitcoin on it, or do one iteration of it. Right?
So I want to thank you all for coming to VCF Southwest. We've had a blast up here, and I especially want to thank everybody up here on stage. Let's give them a round of applause.